Hello my dears, and welcome back to my corner of the internet. Today I've got a book talk video to share with you guys, as well as a couple of shout outs. I'll save those till the end, as well as some info about what you can expect for next week here on my channel. So we'll start with the info about next week. This weekend I've got some family coming in from very far away to visit. I'm so excited to see them. So I'm going to be busy this weekend, so if my engagement is down, if I'm not talking to you guys as much, that's why. I'll be back to normal on Monday, but Monday's video is actually going to be a bloopers video, which even just before I started filming this one, I got a final bit to add to it. So that's going to be up on Monday, and then on Wednesday we're going to have a video talking about sort of an introduction to crystals, and I'm so excited to share that with you guys. It's something I've been interested in for so long, and I can't wait to share where that interest came from, the training that I got about it, and to start sharing with you. And so if we do that and you find it interesting and you'd like me to go more in depth, I'll make a little series out of it, and maybe we'll do like one video a month for 6 months or a year, something like that. So yeah, and now let's just jump right into the book talk. So today I'm going to be talking about The Husband's Secret by Liane Moriarty. I never know if I'm saying her first name right, but hopefully I am. If you'll remember, a few months ago I did a book talk on one of her other videos called Big Little Lies. That book had been made into a HBO miniseries, and it was so good, and then I read the book and I loved it. And so the other day I was just at Walmart and I saw this sitting on the shelf, and I was like, okay, I'll try it. I loved her other book and I'll be interested to read this. And again, it was a great read. It's one of those great summer reads, you know, it's quick, you can't put it down, it's perfect for at the beach or, you know, just hanging around. The thing I love about this author is, while it's hard to explain actually. She falls under a category of what you might call, and I hate this term, chick lit. But she kind of falls into that category, but at the same time, her stories are more than that. Her stories are, there's so much mystery and they're so well written, and she's just a fantastic writer in general. She writes a lot of really, to me, well-rounded characters that you care a lot about. The only thing I would complain is the title, The Husband's Secret. It's kind of like an eye roller in my opinion. There are, you know, I feel like she could have named it something a little more intriguing, but that's neither here nor there. The content's more than made up for the title. So here's what it's about. It starts off with a woman named Cecilia, and she is a wife and a mother to 3 daughters, and she's married to a man named John Paul, and she seems to have the perfect life, the perfect husband, the perfect marriage, just everything seems top-notch. Then one day, when her husband is out of town on business, as he often is, she's up in the attic going through some things. I can't remember what's brought her up there, but oh, I do know what's brought her up there. Her daughter has recently become obsessed with the Berlin Wall, and her mom, Cecilia, had been there when it was coming down, and she had a piece of the wall, and so she's looking for this piece of the wall so that she can give her daughter and kind of, you know, earn some cool points with her by sharing that piece of history with her. So she's up in the attic looking for this piece of the wall. And when she's up there, a shoebox falls over, and out of it tumbles some of her husband's things. And one of the things is a letter, an envelope, a sealed envelope, and it says, in his very distinctive handwriting, like she knows right away it's his handwriting, it says, "To be opened by my wife Cecilia in the event of my death." Wouldn't you be so intrigued? I would be like, oh my god. Now, to her credit, she doesn't open it right away. She kind of she takes it and she puts it, you know, in her pocket or whatever, and later that night when she's talking to him on the phone, she tells him that she found this letter, and he was like, oh, he's like, wow. He's like, I forgot all about that. He said, I actually wrote it when you were in the hospital having our first daughter. And he's like, you know, it's kind of cringy. I was just feeling real emotional. He's like, do me a favor, would you? And don't open it. So she's like, okay, you know, it's his privacy. I won't open it. So she doesn't. She puts it in the office in their like sort of filing cabinet. Then what happens is the next day, even though he wasn't supposed to be home for 3 more days, he comes home the next day. And at first she's kind of surprised, but you know, it's not that surprising. He sometimes, you know, came home early, but not really. But she kind of doesn't put any weight on it. Except later he asks, he's like, so, trying to sound all casual like, so, what'd you do with that letter? And she's like, oh, I put it back up in the shoebox in the attic, which we know she didn't. She put in the filing cabinet in their office. So the day goes on, they go to bed, and she wakes up through the night, and he's not in bed, but she can hear him walking around upstairs in the attic. So at that moment, she's like, oh God. So she runs to the office, and she opens it, and she reads it. Now, meanwhile, there are 2 other families that we're reading about. One is a woman named Tess. At the beginning of the book, she finds out that her cousin and her husband have fallen in love with each other. And she, that night, packs her things, takes their son Liam, and goes back home to her hometown, which is where the other family, Celia and John Paul, where they live. And she goes back home to spend some time with her mom to clear her head and to figure out what in God's name is going on. Then there's a 3rd family, and it's a woman named Rachel. And she's an older woman. She has a grown son and daughter-in-law and grandson that are currently in the process of moving to New York City. They live in Australia. The story takes place in Australia. And she's very sad about it because it's kind of all she has left. Her husband's passed away. And in the 80s, her daughter passed away. And not just, you know, anything. She was actually strangled in a playground when she was, I think, like 17 or 18. So now, the daughter that's passed away, Tess, who has come back to stay with her mother, and both Celia and John Paul from the first family, they're all the same age, and they all knew each other to some degree. So, we began to see how the stories intertwine. We know what the secret is that the husband was keeping. We learn more about Lainey, the daughter that was murdered. And then all of the stories come together. And that's all I'm going to say for right now. I'm going to give a couple of spoilers if you want. If you don't want, exit now, run out of here. But if you do, let's talk about it. So, here is what happens. We find out fairly early on. So the mother of the daughter that was murdered, so Rachel's the mother and then Lainey's the daughter that was murdered, she believes that a man named Connor did it because Connor was linked to her daughter. They were kind of dating. She never really liked him, but at the time of the murder there was never enough to arrest him or convict him. They questioned him and they came out saying it wasn't him. Like, there's no evidence pointing to that. Like, we know you are desperate to find out what happened to this girl, but it wasn't him, so far as we can tell. But Rachel, she holds on to this hatred of this man. His name's Connor, and he lives in town. She works as the secretary at an elementary school, and he's the gym teacher. So she sees him all the time, and she's constantly just sending bad vibes his way because she hates him. And in her heart, she knows that it was him. So what we find out in the letter is that John Paul, Cecilia's husband, he knew Lainey and had been secretly involved with her. And it was him who killed her. And he had she had met him at the park to tell her that she didn't want to see him anymore. She was seeing Connor, and he snapped and he strangled her. Now, what we learn later, because he only snaps for a minute, and then once he realizes he's doing it, he stops, but it's too late. She's dead. What we later learn is that, unbeknownst to her, she actually had a heart condition, and the stress of what was happening triggered it, and that killed her before the actual strangulation did. And he has lived with that secret his whole life, and now Cecilia knows it, and she knows Rachel. She sees her on a daily basis, and she doesn't know what to do with the information. So the book, it builds and it builds and it builds, and eventually one day, so everyone is kind of at the same place at the same time, but they don't know it. Rachel, she's driving down the road. Connor, the man that she thinks killed her daughter, is standing on the side of the road talking on his cell phone. Cecilia and John Paul and their 3 children are walking through a nearby park. John Paul's youngest daughter, Polly, has a huge crush on Connor, the gym teacher. She's like 6, and she just thinks he's the cutest thing. So, in this moment, we have Connor on the one side of the road talking on his phone. We see Polly catch sight of him. And then we see Rachel in the car. And Rachel's decided she's going to run over Connor. Because if the cops won't do anything, she's finally going to get justice for her daughter. She's going to run him over. So as she's going to do that, and of course we know Connor had nothing to do with it. As she's going to do that, Polly comes racing out on her bike to cross the street. And she hits Polly, not Connor. And then she gets out of her car, and she is obviously horrified. And Polly isn't dead. Polly lives, but she ends up losing an arm. And in the hospital they learn that, and Rachel's there, and she's begging Cecilia for forgiveness, and out of nowhere, just out of the stress and the upset, Celia tells her that, because what happens, Rachel tells her, I'm so sorry, I was aiming for Connor, like it's wrong, but I was in a state of just shock and grief, and I was so mad. I wasn't trying to hit Polly. And so Cecilia's always like, why are you trying to hit Connor? And she said, because he killed Lainey, I know he did. And I can't, before I leave this earth, because she's getting older, she's like in her 80s. She's like, before I leave this earth, I can't leave him on it. And Cecilia just blurts out, tells her that it was John Paul. And Rachel's kind of just like blown away, and she doesn't know what to do. And John Paul comes out, and Cecilia's like, well, I told her. And he's like, and then he says to her, please, like, if you're going to call the police, can you please wait? Like, our daughter just had her arm amputated. Can you wait until she heals? Because I can't go to prison right now. Like, she needs both of her parents. And Rachel kind of takes this information, and she says, no, I agree. She does need both of her parents, and I'm not going to call the police. And she takes the info home with her, and she decides that maybe he's suffered enough, you know, keeping the info with, like, having to live with it as someone who, in all other respects, has lived a good life, helping his community, a good father, a good husband. You know, it's tough to know what the right thing to do is, but in her mind, the 20 odd years he's had to deal with it, I think it's 28 years or something that he's had to deal with it, and now suffering with his daughter because of his actions, you know, it's all a domino effect. She decides that he's paid enough, and she can now put it to rest and put it to peace and move on. So there you go. That's the husband's secret. So what would you have done in that if you had been Rachel? Would you have thought he had paid enough, or would you want more justice? Would you want him to go to prison? Let me know down below. I'll be interested to hear what you think. If you had been Cecilia and you read such a letter of your husband or wife or partner confessing a crime like that, what would you do? Would you keep the secret? Would you immediately go to the police? Would you do what Celia did and kind of keep it to yourself for a while trying to figure out what's the right thing to do? It's crazy to think. Such a intense situation. Anyway, so before we go, I've got 2 shout outs for today. The first is for Rusty Faith. Rusty's really sweet guy. He's got a fun channel. He's very supportive. He's been supportive for months and months now. And every time he leaves a comment, I just love it, and I love watching his videos, so I'll link his channel down below. The second shout out for today is for a lovely lady named Yvonne Jack. She lives in China. She shares a lot of really interesting DIY videos, makeup videos, wig videos, just all kinds of things. If you love beauty and makeup and things like that, and you love DIYs, definitely go and check out her channel. And as always, if you go to either of these lovely people's channels, please let them know that I sent you. Anyway, I hope you have a great weekend, and I will see you guys on Monday with that bloopers video. Bye!